Hello, my name is Delara Hightower. A week after my father's will was read, my brother hosted a celebration where I was seated near the kitchen and mistaken for staff. He laughed when I inherited nothing but a rusty old car, looked me in the eye and said, "Need gas money?" I didn't say a word. I just smiled. But what no one knew was that the car he mocked held everything they tried to erase: proof of forgery, a second will, my father's final voice. They thought they cut me out of the family. But what if I was the only one he actually trusted? I hadn't been back to the estate in Charleston since the funeral 2 weeks ago, and even then, I'd barely stayed long enough to say goodbye. The air still carried the weight of mourning, but it had grown colder, emptier. As I turned onto the long gravel drive that led to the house I once called home, the silence in my car felt louder than ever. It wasn't grief that kept me quiet. It was the realization that nothing about this place had ever really been mine. The staff barely acknowledged me as I stepped out. One of them nodded politely before returning to whatever they were doing, trimming hedges, dusting railings, placing fresh-cut flowers in vases too expensive for anything real to grow from. My cousins whispered near the porch, but no one came to hug me. No one even asked how I'd been. I was a footnote in my own family's story. Inside, the air was thick with formality. Mahogany paneling, crystal chandeliers, paintings of dead men with stern faces. Everyone was dressed in black or navy. The lawyer, Mr. Keene, stood near the fireplace holding a thick leather folder. He didn't smile. "As you all know," he began, "Mr. Hightower left very specific instructions in his final will. We are here to execute them." Orson, my older brother, leaned back in his chair like he owned it. And he did, technically. The estate, the family business, the stocks, all of it was coming to him. Even before the papers were read, we all knew it. "To Orson Hightower," Mr. Keene said, "goes the family estate, the company shares totaling 74%, and the Charleston holdings." A few people clapped politely. Orson didn't bother pretending to be humble. He just smirked. "And to Delara Hightower," Keene continued, adjusting his glasses. "Your father left a personal item, the 1971 Chevrolet Impala stored in the barn, and a handwritten letter, which I will pass to you privately." A silence fell over the room. It was so quiet, I could hear the ice clinking in someone's glass across the room. I kept my face still, calm, dignified. Orson leaned in, just enough for only me to hear. "Need gas money, sis?" I didn't respond. I didn't flinch, but I felt the heat rise in my chest like boiling water under a lid. That night, Orson threw a celebration on the terrace. Champagne flowed, strings played. Everyone smiled for photos. I wasn't in a single one. I looked at my invitation again. They'd printed my name as Delora. Not Delara. A typo, they'd say. Just a clerical error. But I knew better. I was always the one they forgot to include correctly. The afterthought. They seated me next to the kitchen door, where servers came and went. At one point, a guest handed me an empty glass and asked for more champagne. I didn't correct her. I just took the glass, walked to the edge of the terrace, and placed it down beside the fountain. I never brought her drink back. I watched Orson soak in the admiration like it was sunlight. Every word he spoke dripped with charm he hadn't earned. He held court like a king, my father's legacy folded neatly into his designer suit. I walked away quietly, heels clicking on the stone floor. No one noticed. No one asked where I was going. Not even my aunt, who used to braid my hair on Sundays. The air turned colder as I reached the edge of the property. Past the hedges, past the stables. There it was. The barn. A soft glow from a motion sensor light spilled out into the gravel. I stood there a moment, remembering something my father once told me when I was 12, the last time he showed me the Impala. "Some things take time to reveal their value," he'd said. Back then, I thought he meant the car. Now, I wasn't so sure. I stepped forward, my eyes locked on the silhouette behind the barn window. You left me more than they can see, didn't you? I didn't go back into the house after that. I slipped around the edge of the terrace and followed the narrow path that led past the garden beds and around the garage, then down toward the old barn. The laughter from the party behind me faded with every step. Somewhere between the stone archway and the gravel path, I stopped hearing Orson's voice at all. The barn hadn't changed. Weather-worn wooden planks, the old lock rusted but still working. I stepped inside and flicked the switch. As always, it didn't work. Moonlight spilled in through the slats high on the walls, cutting across the dust like pale ribbons. The air smelled of old motor oil and pine. I didn't bother turning on my phone flashlight. I knew where the Impala was. I walked straight to it, pulled back the cover, and stood there a moment. It looked just like I remembered. Blue paint faded almost to gray, a long scratch running down the passenger side from when I backed into a mailbox at 16. It didn't look like an inheritance. It looked like a memory. One no one wanted but me. I opened the door, slid into the driver's seat, and laid my hands on the wheel. The leather was cracked, but familiar. I said it out loud before I even realized the words were forming. Not even the radio works. But something was off. The hood wasn't shut properly. The latch didn't feel the same when I pulled it. I got out, moved to the front of the car, and opened it. That's when I saw it. Wires that weren't factory. Not from 1971. Someone had run fresh cabling along the firewall, tucked just enough out of view to avoid casual detection. It didn't look like restoration. It looked like surveillance. I stepped back, opened the rear passenger door. Tools in the seat, screwdrivers, pliers, electrical tape. None of it mine, none of it my father's. My stomach twisted. I crouched and followed the wire under the steering column. A small black device blinked softly. I recognized it. A GPS tracker, paired with a hidden microphone. I'd seen them before in corporate security audits. Someone had been listening and following. Not since last week. This looked older, installed clean, maintained. They didn't give me this car because it was worthless. They gave it to me because they thought they'd already stripped it of value, and maybe because they assumed I wouldn't know how to look deeper. I sat in silence for a while, the barn door half open behind me, the wind rustling through the trees outside. The whole time I could feel it. Someone, somewhere, had wanted to hear what I'd do with this gift. But tonight, I was the one listening. I didn't sleep much. The next morning, I left early and drove across town to the co-working space I'd used the past year when I worked remotely for the company. I logged into the network, or tried to. Access denied. I thought maybe I mistyped. Tried again. Same result. My email wouldn't connect. I tried the backup system login. Blocked. Then I went to the internal project tracker, something I helped build, and found nothing. No user ID. No credentials. I called Claire. She'd been on the tech team 2 years longer than I had, and though we weren't close friends, we shared enough late nights on launches to have mutual respect. Hey, Claire, it's Delara. A long pause. Oh. Hi. Are you okay? Quick question, I said, forcing calm. Did something happen to my account? I can't access anything. Another pause. I could hear her clicking something on a keyboard. Yeah. I don't think I'm supposed to say this, but they removed you last month. Last month. Orson said it was retroactive. She added quickly, like she didn't want to be caught talking. He had IT roll back the logs, like you never had access. Del, I'm sorry. I thanked her, hung up, and stared at the traffic light outside the window. It wasn't just about control, it was about erasure. I didn't cry. That would have felt like giving them what they wanted. Instead, I walked a few blocks down to one of those quiet diners near Meeting Street, sat at the counter, ordered black coffee, no cream, no sugar. The waitress looked like she'd seen her fair share of late nights and betrayals. She didn't ask questions, just brought the mug and left me alone. I pulled out the small leather-bound journal I kept in my bag. It wasn't for planning or goals, just fragments, Quotes, thoughts, moments that stuck with me. I flipped to a blank page and wrote one word in bold, all caps. Document. Then, underneath, this isn't about inheritance, it's about erasure. That journal entry stayed on my mind the rest of the day. I didn't head back to the estate that night. Instead, I stopped by a motel off Rivers Avenue, the kind with no frills and flickering neon. I needed time, space, quiet. The next morning, I bought a cheap set of tools from a hardware store and drove straight to the barn. I kept the windows down the whole ride, not because I needed fresh air, but because I needed to remember how to breathe when my world felt smaller than a glove box. I parked just outside the barn and stepped inside. Sunlight crept through the slats now, slicing across the hood of the Impala. I'd seen it so many times before, but this time I approached with purpose. Not nostalgia, not fear. Purpose. I opened the trunk without knowing exactly why. Just a tug at something deeper than instinct, the kind of nudge you feel when you forget something important and can't remember what it was, only that it matters. The carpeting inside was stiff from years of humidity, but I noticed a section toward the back that looked newer, cleaner. I peeled it back and found a small panel. Wood, not metal. Hand-cut. Screwed in by hand. My hands moved on their own, reaching into the bag for the screwdriver I'd just bought. It took me a few minutes, but the panel popped loose with a creak. Behind it was a wooden box, maybe 14 inches wide, aged but intact. A rusted lock held it shut. I sat down on the trunk ledge, rested the box on my lap, and picked at the latch until it gave way with a reluctant snap. Inside, silence. Not literal silence. There were papers, receipts, folders, but everything inside made me still. My breath, my heartbeat, my thoughts. They all stopped. The folder on top read, Transfer, Delara Hightower. My name, my actual full name. Not Delora, not Del, not the girl with the car. Me. I opened it slowly, revealing property deeds, 4, maybe 5. All with my name typed clearly, stamped, signed. Dated years ago. Stock shares too. Minority holdings, yes, but valuable. More than anything I'd ever been told I had. One even had a sticky note in my father's handwriting, keep this safe. I flipped to the last page of the stack and froze. A document that looked familiar. A family trust amendment. My name was included, then crossed out. Not digitally, not reprinted. Scratched out by pen, as if removed in haste. At the bottom, my father's signature remained. And beside it, Orson's. I let out a slow breath and gently set the folder aside. My hands reached deeper into the box and pulled out a smaller envelope, yellowed, sealed with a waxy red dot. There was no label, no name, just tucked beneath the documents like a secret he'd hoped I'd find. I opened it carefully. The letter inside was shaky in ink but deliberate in tone. Delara, if you're reading this, you were erased. I'm sorry. I never meant for it to go this way. This car, this box, this moment. It's all that I could control. I knew something was wrong long before my doctors did. I knew Orson was preparing to remove you. I couldn't stop him from manipulating the others. But I could at least leave this behind, where only you would know to look. They think I chose them. I didn't. I chose you. And if you're holding this, I need you to remember that. He didn't sign it Dad, just Howard. I folded the letter slowly and leaned back against the wall of the barn. My father had never been a sentimental man. He was distant, measured, someone who loved through planning, not touch. But this was as close to a confession as he could have given. The heat I felt last night came rushing back, but it didn't feel like anger this time. It felt like awakening, like a quiet thread pulling me forward. For years, I wondered if I'd misread him, if my absence in board meetings, family photos, succession plans meant I'd somehow fallen short. But he saw it, he knew, and he acted. Quietly, secretly, in a way that would only make sense after he was gone. I placed the documents and the letter into a separate folder from my bag and closed the trunk. I sat in the driver's seat, still, and stared out through the cracked windshield at the barn doors. They gave me this car thinking it was a joke, or a leftover. But this wasn't a relic, it was a vault, and now it was mine. I ran my fingers along the dashboard once more and started listing the facts in my head. Deeds, shares, a trust amendment, a letter. I had the bones. Now I needed proof of the meat. This wasn't about proving I deserved anything. It was about proving they knew I did and chose to erase me anyway. I reached for my phone, opened my Notes app, and typed out a single task list. Scan all documents. Cross-check property IDs with county records. Track down notary signatures. Find out when Orson co-signed the trust amendment. Ask Lucian what else he's hiding. The last item sat there a little heavier than the rest. My father's lawyer, his closest confidant in the end, hadn't told me about this. Hadn't warned me. That wasn't a mistake. That was a choice. I would give him one chance to explain. Just one. I started the engine out of instinct. It didn't turn over, of course. Battery was long dead. But in that moment, I didn't need it to run. I needed it to remind me that I could. I leaned forward, resting my forehead against the wheel, and whispered, "If they took this from me once, they'll try again. But this time, I'm the one watching." The message was short. 10 words, no punctuation, just enough to make her know I wasn't bluffing. I sent it from the parking lot outside the courthouse, still holding the flash drive I'd been given. The county records clerk had been polite, but she didn't hide her curiosity. "Been a lot of Hightowers through here," she said as she handed me the thumb drive, her eyes scanning me from behind thick-rimmed glasses. "Some of 'em louder than others." I gave her a tight smile. "I'm one of the quiet ones." Back inside my car, I plugged the drive into my laptop and opened the file folder labeled Archived Footage, 2019. My heart thudded low in my chest. I didn't know what I expected to find. Maybe a scan of a signed document, maybe nothing. But not this. It was security camera footage, grainy and time-stamped. A side hallway at Hightower & Knox Legal. I recognized the corridor, used to walk it when I interned there during college. The camera pointed toward a conference room door. In the video, a woman walked in, face partially turned from the lens. She wore a navy blazer, her dark blonde hair swept into a low bun. But when she turned to adjust something on the table, I saw her face. Aunt Verena. She sat down, pulled out a folder from her bag, and took a pen from her coat pocket. I watched her place several documents on the table, then lean in. She signed a name. My name. Delara Hightower. I froze. Not because I didn't believe it. I'd suspected her for years, of favors, of quiet manipulations. But seeing it on screen felt different. It wasn't a hunch anymore. It was proof. She lingered a moment, looked right into the camera, either unaware or unfazed, and gathered the papers calmly before walking out. The footage ended. I sat back and stared at the screen, fingers twitching. All these years, I'd told myself maybe I wasn't assertive enough. Maybe I hadn't tried hard enough. But this was theft. Not of money or title, but identity. She hadn't just taken my signature, she'd taken my place. That afternoon, I messaged Lucian and asked him to meet me somewhere quiet. We picked a small cafe tucked near the old waterfront, one of those places with worn booths and waitresses who'd been there long enough to forget your name, but never your order. He arrived before I did, seated in the corner, with a cup of chamomile tea, tie slightly loosened. He looked tired, not just from age, but from the weight of years lived defending other people's secrets. "I assume this isn't a casual check-in?" he said as I slid into the booth across from him. "I found footage," I said, skipping pleasantries. 4 years ago, Verena forged my name on property transfers. They match what was hidden in the Impala. Lucian didn't react right away. He sipped his tea, eyes not leaving mine. "There's something else," he said softly. Your father submitted a revised will, 3 weeks before he died. I blinked. What? He nodded. He updated it, added you back in, gave you significant control, estate shares, decision-making rights. He filed it, but the document was intercepted, never recorded. Intercepted by who? I don't have proof, but Orson's legal team closed ranks immediately after the filing. I was pushed out. Officially, it was a conflict of interest. I assumed you knew. No, Lucian, I said, the edge in my voice sharpening. I didn't know because no one told me. I should have pushed harder, he admitted, but I thought, after everything, you didn't want to fight. I laughed once, short and humorless. I didn't know I was in one. He slid a folder across the table. This is a copy of the revised will. Howard gave it to me in case things got ugly. He told me to protect it if Orson got greedy. I opened it. My name, right there, clean, centered, unquestioned. It felt strange seeing it on something official. Strange and right. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I simply folded the document and placed it into my bag. Then I pulled out a small notepad and wrote down 3 names. Verena, Orson, Hadley Crane, the lawyer who'd handled most of the estate matters after Dad's passing. I'm going to confront her, I said, glancing up. Verena. Lucian hesitated. Delara, are you sure? She's well connected. You make this public. There's no going back. There was never anything to go back to. I stood, nodded my thanks, and left the cafe. The wind had picked up. A few seagulls circled overhead, calling out over the rooftops. Back in the car, I stared at the screen again. Verena's face, the pen, my name. I pulled out my phone, opened a new message, and typed, "We need to talk, about signatures." I hit send. The sun had dipped below the rooftops by the time I pulled up outside the downtown event hall. The invitation had arrived in a sleek black envelope. No RSVP requested, just expected. Orson was calling it a legacy celebration. That name alone told me exactly what he planned to do. Rewrite the story in real time. I stepped inside, unnoticed, as the crowd mingled over past hors d'oeuvres and bottomless glasses of Pinot. No one looked twice at me. Not the executives shaking hands, not the board members nodding through practiced smiles. To them, I was still the girl who got the car, and nothing else. That's how he wanted it. From the back of the room, I watched Orson glide onto the stage. Navy suit, crisp collar, smile so polished it could blind a camera flash. The room hushed. He adjusted the mic, cleared his throat, and began the performance. I want to thank everyone here tonight for carrying my father's legacy forward, he said, his voice rich with feigned humility. Howard Hightower believed in hard work, integrity, and family unity. Tonight, we honor that spirit. On cue, a screen behind him lit up. A montage began. Childhood videos of Orson playing baseball in the yard, with Dad. Graduation photos, business milestones. Not a single clip of me. Not one. Even group family photos had been carefully cropped or blurred, my presence erased like a smudge on glass. The final image was of him and Dad, seated side by side at the company headquarters, framed as if it were a passing of the torch. I could practically hear the camera shutter in my memory, because I took that photo. And I remembered standing behind the lens, holding back tears, because Dad had asked me to capture the moment, instead of sitting beside him. A reporter raised her hand during the Q&A. Mr. Hightower, how do you respond to your sister's recent claims about a second will? His smile didn't flinch. My sister is grieving. We all are, but grief doesn't change legal filings. Polite laughter followed. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I let his words settle around the room like smoke from a match lit too close to dry timber. After the event, I didn't wait for him to spot me. I turned and walked out the side exit, took the back road to the estate, and drove straight to the barn. The car was still there, untouched. I sat in the driver's seat and opened the glove compartment out of habit, even though I'd checked it before. Something felt off. I reached under the dashboard, and my fingers brushed against a strip of electrical tape. Tucked behind the panel was a flash drive. Tiny. Unmarked. I grabbed the old laptop I'd stored in the back seat, booted it up, and inserted the drive. It buzzed quietly. A single file appeared. Voice MP3. I clicked play. My father's voice filled the barn, worn, thin, but unmistakably his. "If you're hearing this," he began, "they didn't want you to. That car is your shield." He paused, breath labored. "Orson is capable, but careless. He'll burn what he can't control. I saw it. Too late, maybe, but I saw it." I sat still, my hand on the laptop. The old air in the barn seemed to press closer around me, like it wanted to listen too. "I made mistakes," he continued, "but not this one. You were never meant to be erased. You were meant to outlast them. This file, these documents, they're yours now. The truth will wait for you, just like I did." The file ended. I didn't cry. Not the way I had in the past, quietly and alone. What rose in my chest wasn't sorrow. It was recognition. I wasn't left out. I was hidden, shielded. They didn't forget me. They feared me. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed in the barn, listening to the recording again and again. Not because I didn't believe it, but because I needed to feel each word anchor itself inside me, to remind me of what I was holding. Orson wanted a version of me the world could dismiss, a grieving, bitter sister who got a rusty car and nothing more. A woman too emotional to lead, too detached to be trusted. But that version was a lie they painted so they could pretend the theft was justified. And if I had any say in it, it was about to be set on fire. I opened my laptop, copied the audio file onto a new drive, and slipped it into my pocket. I reached for the notebook I kept beside the gear shift, flipped to a clean page, and wrote, "Release everything, all at once." Then, just below it, "Then it's time to burn the version of me they made up." I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I watched the city roll slowly into dawn from the window of a 24-hour cafe tucked between a dry cleaner and a bookstore that hadn't updated its front display since last year. I had my laptop open, but I wasn't typing. Not yet. The folder on my screen was labeled Erased Truth. Inside it, the forged signature video, the unfiled will, the property deeds, the audio file from the barn. Proof. Not of what I lost, but of what they stole. At 6:12 a.m., I hovered over the upload button. One click, and there would be no going back. The lies wouldn't be hidden behind mahogany doors or locked drawers anymore. They'd be exposed, bare, public, undeniable. I took a slow sip of cold coffee, then clicked. It took less than 30 seconds. The archive was live. Then I opened a blank post, attached the link, and wrote, "In honor of my father, and the truth he left behind. For those who never got a seat at the table, even when they helped build it." I hit publish. I closed the laptop and leaned back, letting the hum of the city seep in. I didn't check reactions. I didn't refresh. I just breathed. By the time I drove back to my place an hour later, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Missed calls, texts from numbers I hadn't saved, notifications from news outlets. The post had gone viral, not just within the business circles, but across Charleston. Erased Daughter was trending by mid-morning. Local journalists called it the scandal of the season. Former employees at Hightower Properties began speaking up, quietly, cautiously. Some confirmed they'd seen Verena in meetings she had no role in. Others recalled questions being redirected from me to Orson, even when I was the project lead. By noon, the real estate group's main website was down. Maintenance, they claimed. At 3:04 p.m., there was a knock on my door. I didn't check the peephole. I knew. Verena stood there in pearls and a sky blue sweater set, looking like she just stepped out of a Sunday brunch in Mount Pleasant. Her smile was syrupy. Her eyes weren't. "Dilara," she said, drawing out the last syllable like it was a flavor she didn't care for. "We should talk." I crossed my arms and leaned against the doorframe. "No need. Everything I have to say is already public." She gave a soft chuckle. "Come on now, don't be dramatic. You've made your point. Let's be reasonable." I tilted my head. "You forged my signature. Reason left the room 4 years ago." Verina's smile didn't falter. She stepped in a little, lowering her voice. "You've stirred up a lot of noise. But you and I both know scandals fade fast. Memories fade faster. Charleston loves a comeback story. Let Orson have his." "What makes you think I care about Orson's story?" I asked. "Because you're not a destroyer, Dilara. You never have been." Her tone shifted, just enough to sound almost genuine. "Let's fix this. Quietly, what do you want?" I laughed, dry and low. "Not your money, not your fake family." She blinked, then straightened. "You'll ruin him." "No," I said. "He's doing that himself." She stared at me for a long moment, then gave a tight nod. "You've changed." I finally stopped asking for permission. Verina didn't argue. She turned and walked down the steps without another word. That night, I made a pot of tea and sat at the kitchen table while the comments rolled in. There were the usual trolls, the ones who called me greedy or bitter or irrelevant. But most were different. Messages from people I didn't know, some with only a few followers, others with thousands. I worked in a family business too. My brother took the credit, my mom let him. My aunt signed over my inheritance when I was 18, told me it was for the good of the family. "You're not alone." One message stopped me cold. It was from an old investor, someone I'd only met once, years ago, during a company presentation. "I knew your numbers were sharper than Orson's," he wrote. "I should have followed up then. Thank you for not staying quiet." I didn't reply, but I reread it 3 times. It was strange, the kind of strength that came not from revenge, but from validation. I didn't want Orson's position. I didn't crave applause. I just wanted to exist, fully, without being edited out of my own story. Later, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling and whispered to the dark. By the time morning came, my phone had stopped ringing. The silence wasn't peace. It was the hush before something big. Around 10:15, the doorbell rang. Not a knock. Not an impatient bang. Just a single ring, short and sharp. I opened the door to find a courier in a navy jacket, holding a thick envelope. "Are you Ms. Dilara Hightower?" I nodded. He handed me the envelope, tapped his clipboard, and left without a word. The envelope read, "Hightower Holdings v. Dilara Hightower. Defamation, fraud, emotional harm." I stood there for a long minute. No panic, no disbelief. Just the quiet simmer of fury rising up from my spine. He was trying to silence me with the very system I'd spent years helping him build. It was classic Orson. When charm failed, he turned to control. And when control slipped, he reached for the courts. I called Lucian. "He served me." "I figured he would," he replied. "Come by in 2 hours. We're filing our own motion." 2 hours later, I was seated beside Lucian at the courthouse. The room wasn't grand, just rows of pew-like benches, the murmur of legal assistants, and a tired bailiff who looked like he'd seen this show too many times. Orson entered with his legal team, 2 sharp suits, and 1 PR consultant, with a laminated smile. He caught my eye, but didn't nod. He didn't need to. His arrogance did the talking. The judge took her seat, glanced at the docket, and began. Lucian stood first. "Your Honor, we are prepared to answer the plaintiff's complaint. In addition, we are filing a countersuit for suppression of legal documents, misuse of a state authority, and perjury." He handed the folder over, calm as ever. The judge flipped through the papers. Her brows lifted at the audio transcript. "This is the late Howard Hightower's voice?" "Yes, Your Honor," Lucian said. "Unedited. Verified timestamp. The The clip will show him stating clearly that my client was excluded by design, not by merit. The courtroom went still. Orson shifted in his chair, jaw tightening. His attorney asked for a brief recess. It was denied. That night, I made no public statements. But they did. A popular podcast ran a segment titled, Sister with a Laptop or Corporate Conspirator. They played clips from my deposition, mocked my handwriting on the will draft, and ended with, sounds like someone's mad the trust fund missed her name. I listened once. That was enough. Instead of reacting, I posted a video. No voiceover, no commentary. Just 4 images side by side. A screenshot of the email deletion logs. A scan of my signature forged by Verena. A time-stamped version of the trust amendment. The audio file of my father saying, I trust her. I only trust her. No hashtags, no captions, just the truth. It was shared 42,000 times in 12 hours. The shift was immediate. Sakshi daughter became your daughter of the truth. My inbox flooded with messages, some apologetic, some stunned, many saying what I didn't need but still appreciated. We believe you now. The next morning, Orson's lead attorney stepped down. No press release, no explanation, just a silent exodus from a sinking ship. And then came the investor letter. One of the top stakeholders in Hightower Holdings posted an open memo to the board. We regret our misplaced confidence. Our future lies not in manufactured legacy, but in integrity. The company's stock dipped 13% in a day. For once, I didn't feel victorious. I felt vindicated. This wasn't about winning. It was about being seen. At the courthouse that afternoon, reporters waited outside. I stepped through the doors in a navy dress I'd owned for 5 years, the same one I wore to Dad's memorial. The crowd pressed forward. Delara, do you have any comment? Will you settle? Is Orson stepping down? I held up a hand, not to silence them, but to signal I had one thing to say. We're not done yet. The invitation arrived the next afternoon, delivered by hand, thick ivory cardstock with gold trim. It smelled like money, the kind of event where legacy was not discussed, but displayed. I wasn't surprised to see Orson's name printed in bold, honoring excellence in business leadership, Orson Hightower. Below it, in smaller type, family guests welcome, Ms. Delara Hightower, confirmed. I read that last line twice. Confirmed? I hadn't RSVP'd. It was a calculated move. He wanted me there, not to reconcile, but to stage his version of redemption. A carefully curated moment where he could play gracious, turn the tide, and silence me once and for all. I decided to attend, not because I wanted the spectacle, but because I wasn't finished. That Thursday evening, I pulled into the Charleston City Hall parking lot just after 6. The plaza was already buzzing with press vans, valet lines, and small clusters of attendees in cocktail attire, checking their teeth in phone screens and adjusting cufflinks. Inside, the rotunda glowed with chandeliers and political polish. Rows of seats faced a podium flanked by banners bearing the Hightower crest and some vague motto about legacy with integrity. I found my seat in the 3rd row, pre-assigned, right side, just far enough to frame me in press photos without putting me too close to Orson's spotlight. He took the stage at 6:45 sharp. He looked thinner than usual, sharper around the edges. His voice, though, still had the same smooth cadence. I recognized every syllable, scripted, practiced. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight is not just about me, he began, but about honoring the work my father built, and the unity of our family which has endured, even through difficult seasons. He paused. A calculated breath. There have been misunderstandings, moments of tension, but tonight we choose reconciliation. We choose to move forward. Then he did it. He gestured toward me. Delara, would you join me? The crowd shifted. Heads turned. Cameras clicked. I felt every eye follow me as I rose. I climbed the steps slowly. Not to stall, but to steady myself. I didn't look at Orson right away. I looked at the people in front of us. the board members who'd nodded along with every lie, the socialites who had once asked me if I was the adopted one, the employees who pretended I didn't exist. Then I turned to my brother. He extended the mic toward me, eyes warm with performance. I took it gently, then stepped half a pace away. "There are truths," I began, my voice calm and clear, "that do not need forgiveness. They need exposure." Silence. A real one. Not the kind that hangs between speeches, but the kind that cuts through noise like glass. I handed the mic back and walked down the steps without another word. Behind me, I heard murmurs swell, then stall. The next speaker hesitated, unsure if the program should continue. I kept walking, straight out the doors, into the cool air of the Charleston night. The fallout didn't take long. By sunrise, Hollings Capital had released a formal statement. "We are withdrawing all financial support from Hightower Holdings, effective immediately, due to revelations of misconduct and intentional misrepresentation." The company website removed Orson's photo by noon. Several smaller partners followed. The real estate industry doesn't forgive dishonesty, not when money's on the line. That evening, I passed City Hall again on my way home. News crews still lingered outside. Someone recognized me, raised a microphone. I kept walking. No press statements, no interviews, no sound bites. Just a woman walking away from a chapter she didn't choose, but refused to let be rewritten without her voice. I turned the corner, where my car was parked beneath a willow tree. I paused there for a moment, the branches swaying low like they wanted to hear a secret. "There's still one thing left to finish," I whispered. I didn't go home after leaving City Hall. Instead, I drove along East Bay Street, then circled down toward the old part of town, where the sidewalks are still uneven brick and the ironwork fences have stories older than my family name. I parked by the waterfront, watched the masts sway against the fading skyline, and sat in silence. I wasn't ready to let go. Not yet. A few days later, I received an invitation from the Charleston Historical Museum. No ceremony, no press. Just a quiet note that said, "Your father's car is ready. We'd be honored to have you see it first." I arrived early. No entourage, no cameras. Just me and the echo of my heels on marble floors. The building smelled of lemon oil and paper, like stories preserved under glass. I turned the corner into the new exhibit room. There it stood. The Impala had been restored to perfection. Its paint, a rich steel blue, now polished to a mirror finish, reflected the lights overhead. The leather seats had been conditioned, but not replaced. The small crack in the passenger door left untouched, preserved like a scar that carried too much truth to cover up. I approached it slowly, letting myself absorb every inch of it. The same car they laughed at, the one Orson called junk. It now stood on a raised platform, behind velvet ropes, under a glass dome. To the right, a simple plaque read, "This vehicle held more than memories. It carried truth." I let my eyes drift to the far wall. Framed photographs lined it. My father in his early business years, photos from development sites, ribbon cuttings, newspaper clippings. But one image stopped me cold. A photo of me. Not cropped, not blurred, not cut away. It was from my 12th birthday. I stood between my father and Orson, one hand on the car door, the other holding a key he had just placed in my palm. I remember how big that key felt back then, how it had made me feel trusted, worthy. The original photo had once been edited. My part removed for a magazine article. I found that version months ago, buried in a drawer. But this was whole. Below it, a brass plate read, "Legacy is not what you leave, it's who remembers." I stood there for what felt like hours, letting the weight of that sentence settle. I didn't need to speak. My silence had done the work, and now my presence was etched into more than just memory. As I walked toward the exit, I noticed a small group of schoolchildren with a tour guide entering the exhibit. One little girl, no older than 10, pointed to the car and asked, "Whose is that?" The guide smiled. That belonged to Delara Hightower. She used it to prove the truth about her family's legacy. The girl nodded slowly, then whispered to her friend, "Cool." I smiled. Just a little. That night, back home, I made a cup of tea and curled up on the couch with a blanket. The house was quiet. My inbox had finally stopped buzzing, but one message slipped in. No subject line, no signature, just a single paragraph. "You don't know me. But because of your story, I didn't jump today. Thank you." I read it twice, then a third time, then closed my laptop gently. That kind of message, you don't reply to. You let it sit. Let it warm the parts of you no court ruling or corporate battle ever could. Later, I stepped outside. The museum's dome was just visible from my porch. The city felt softer somehow, like it had exhaled. I watched the wind play with the leaves of the old magnolia tree in the front yard, and whispered, to no one in particular, maybe to him, maybe just to the night. Some things aren't meant to be inherited, they're meant to be rebuilt and remembered. Sometimes the quietest daughters leave the loudest legacies. Some things aren't taken from you, they're buried, hoping you won't dig deep enough to find them. But truth has a way of surfacing, especially when someone dares to stand up alone. What would you have done if your own family erased you from your legacy? If this story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, because every family has secrets, and we've got more stories you won't believe.